Lost Continent was the most ambitious land Universal ever built. It was Universal's boldest creative gamble, a realm of ancient myths, crumbling temples, and fire-breathing dragons. A land made not to promote a film, but to prove that Universal could do world-building as well as Disney. And then, something went wrong. The land was slowly abandoned over time, closing its once unique attractions, while more ambitious projects popped up all around it. So, what happened? How did one of the most detailed and original themed lands in Universal's history end up erased from existence? The Lost Continent was conceived during the mid-1990s, when Universal Creative was at the height of its imagination. The company wanted Islands of Adventure to compete directly with Disney's best work, especially after the success of Magic Kingdom and Epcot had defined the 70s and 80s. But Universal didn't just want to copy Disney, they wanted to surpass them, and that meant creating lands that weren't limited to film franchises. The Lost Continent represented the pinnacle of that philosophy. It was a land built on myth and legend, divided into three distinct realms: the Arabian marketplace of Sinbad's Bazaar, the enchanting Merlinwood, and the crumbling ruins of the Lost City. Together, they told the story of an ancient world filled with explorers, adventurers, and gods. Everything from the music to the stonework to the food was designed to immerse guests in a cohesive narrative that felt timeless. When it opened, critics and fans praised it for its visual grandeur. The rockwork alone was monumental, rivaling anything Disney had built up to that point. Waterfalls flowed over massive statues, temples loomed over your head, and dragons battled just in the distance. Universal Creative used the latest scenic technology to create illusions that blended reality and mythology, with some of the most advanced special effects of the era. And then there were the smaller details. The mystic fountain interacted with guests, cracking jokes and spraying unsuspecting bystanders. The shops and eateries were packed with original theming and handcrafted props. It was clear that the Lost Continent wasn't built to sell merchandise from a movie. It was built to sell the experience of adventure itself. But as Universal's brand evolved, the philosophy began to clash with a new reality. The rise of Universal's film-based and character-based lands ironically started with Islands of Adventure, and the rest of the park showed that intellectual properties drove attendance and merchandise sales far more effectively than original concepts. As the years went on, the parks shifted their focus towards IP integration. Jurassic Park got new life from the film franchise. Marvel remained a cornerstone despite licensing restrictions, and Harry Potter would soon dominate the park entirely. Meanwhile, the Lost Continent, without a recognizable name or franchise to support it, would be left behind. The Lost Continent's attraction lineup was as unconventional as its design philosophy, blending live entertainment, dining and storytelling, and thrill rides deeply embedded in their environments. In Sinbad's Bazaar, the Eighth Voyage of Sinbad stood as one of the most ambitious live stunt shows Universal had ever produced. Unlike many theme park shows, Sinbad was staged on a massive scale. The story followed Sinbad on a mythical voyage, battling dark sorcerers and supernatural forces, all communicated largely through action rather than dialogue. This made the show universally accessible, but it also demanded attention and patience from its audience. For guests willing to engage, though, Sinbad was a masterclass in cinematic storytelling through live performance. For others, it was easy to overlook in a park increasingly dominated by headline rides. Merlinwood was anchored by Dueling Dragons, an attraction that would become legendary among coaster enthusiasts. Built by B&M, the ride featured two inverted roller coasters, racing through the ruins of a castle, designed to feel like two dragons locked in eternal combat. Fire Dragon and Ice Dragon, Pyrock and Blizzrock to be precise, twisted around each other with near-miss elements that were groundbreaking at the time, creating an experience that felt both thrilling and narratively motivated. What set Dueling Dragons apart was not just the intensity of the ride, but how seemingly it fit into the land's mythology. The queue wound through castle ruins, armories, and dragon lore, reinforcing the idea that this conflict had existed long before the park itself. Nearby, the Flying Unicorn provided a lighter, family-friendly coaster, while the Enchanted Oak Tavern offered a quiet, atmospheric dining space that reinforced Merlinwood's mystical identity, rather than breaking immersion. The Lost City formed the emotional and visual climax of the land, dominated by Poseidon's Fury, part walkthrough attraction, part live performance, and part special effects showcase. Poseidon's Fury guided guests through an ancient temple where gods battled for control. Firewalls, pyro, massive water effects, projection mapping, and the iconic Vortex Tunnel combined to create an experience that felt more like a theatrical event than a ride. Mythos completed the experience, widely regarded as one of the best theme park restaurants ever built. Perched above waterfalls in carved stone, Mythos wasn't just a place to eat, but a continuation of the land's mythology, reinforcing the idea that every element served the story. But by the late 2000s, cracks began to form, both literally and figuratively. The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad started to feel dated, with audiences growing tired of its campy humor and repetitive stunts. Poseidon's Fury struggled to keep up with the times. Its technology was spectacular in 1999, but by the 2010s, it couldn't compete with high-tech wizardry of new attractions like the updated Spider-Man and Forbidden Journey. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter opened on land that once belonged to the Lost Continent. Half of the original area, Merlinwood, was completely transformed. Hogsmeade was a runaway success, redefining what theme lands could achieve financially and creatively. For Universal, the lesson was clear. People wanted to step into their favorite stories, not new ones they didn't already know. After Hogsmeade's debut, the Lost Continent's remaining sections felt like a relic. Attendance in that corner of the park dwindled, and the once lively atmosphere faded. Sinbad's show closed in 2018 after nearly 2 decades, leaving a large empty theater in its wake. Poseidon's Fury limped along for a few more years, with occasional updates and show tweaks, before closing permanently in 2023. Much like Atlantis itself, the Lost Continent has disappeared completely and is now just the stuff of myth. The Lost Continent worked because it trusted its audience. It believed guests would engage with atmosphere, interpret visual storytelling, and appreciate attractions that didn't rely on familiar brands. At its best, the land delivered a depth of immersion that rivaled anything in the industry at the time. Dueling Dragons proved that thrill rides could be narratively driven without sacrificing intensity. The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad demonstrated that live entertainment could be just as impactful as any ride. Mythos and Poseidon's Fury showed how dining and walkthrough attractions could elevate world building rather than interrupt it. However, these strengths became liabilities as guest expectations evolved. Without a recognizable IP, the Lost Continent struggled to communicate its appeal quickly. Guests often didn't understand what the land was about until they were already inside it, and even then, the lack of central narrative could feel disjointed. You would often hear quotes like, "What is this land? Is this Lord of the Rings?" and stuff like that, essentially. However, this would all fundamentally change with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Harry Potter didn't just succeed, it fundamentally reshaped Universal's identity. It proved that deeply immersive lands work best when anchored by globally beloved characters. As Potter expanded, Dueling Dragons was rethemed into Dragon Challenge and eventually removed entirely. Sinbad closed quietly, leaving Sinbad's Bazaar without its narrative centerpiece. Piece by piece, the Lost Continent lost its cohesion and magic, not because it failed creatively, but because it no longer aligned with Universal's long-term strategy. Poseidon's Fury, while impressive, was never designed to carry an entire land on its own. Its unconventional format and reliance on live performance made it divisive, and as thrill rides and IP-driven attractions became the primary draw, it struggled to remain relevant as an anchor. But was this all the fault of lack of IP, or is there more of the story? Why exactly did Lost Continent ultimately fail? The Lost Continent was not a failure of imagination, but a casualty of evolution. It existed at a moment when Universal was still discovering who it wanted to be as a destination resort. Today, lands like Celestial Park at Epic Universe prove that non-IP environments can still thrive when designed with clarity and intent. The difference is that Universal now understands how to balance originality and accessibility. As well, you kinda have to interact with Celestial Park to enter the various IP-anchored portals at Epic. So in a sense, Celestial Park both functions as a Main Street USA, port of entry, and Lost Continent all in one. Unfortunately, the Lost Continent didn't require your interaction, especially after Harry Potter opened. It simply became a pass-through to get to Forbidden Journey, and even functioned as a queue line at times when Hagrid first opened. For fans of Islands of Adventure, though, the Lost Continent will always hold a special place in the park's history. It was daring, messy, and occasionally confusing, but it was also beautiful, immersive, and unafraid to take risks. Even as it disappeared, its ambition continues to influence how themed entertainment is imagined. The Lost Continent may be gone, but its spirit lives on. As a reminder of what happens when a theme park chooses to build ambitiously and figures out everything else later. Will you miss Lost Continent? Let me know down below. And as always, remember rule number 5, relax and enjoy the ride. Thanks for watching.